funny how it took Zero an entire series and a half to realize what he's fighting for.
Let's see, I've covered the Classic Series, the X Series, Battle Network... here we go! Out of all the generations of Mega Man, I would definitely say that the Mega Man Zero series is my favorite, mainly because it was the most consistent in quality. That being said, it's quite a departure from previous generations, given its more serious story and themes, emphasis on a standard set of weapons, and not to mention they're typically considered the hardest generation of Mega Man by a considerable margin. And that challenge extends to many of its boss fights. The Zero series comes packed with exciting battles against some fierce and challenging bosses, and I'm ready to bare my blade against the toughest, fiercest, and most fun of them all. Having recently come off a full Let's Play of the entire Zero series thanks to the Zero ZX Legacy Collection, the memories of these tense battles are fresh in my head, so there's no better time than now to lay the cards on the table with Neo Arcadia's finest. Weapons armed, cyber elves equipped. Operator, get the tran server ready! It's game time! Between the events of Mega Man Zero 1 and 2, Zero has been wandering the desert for a full year, with Neo Arcadia's forces on his back pretty much the entire time. Yeah, you should expect to have a target on your back after assassinating the leader of an entire city whose troops have been targeting your kind for elimination, but at some point they figured a bunch of X clones simply wasn't enough. A first boss should be easy enough to handle without getting frustrated, but not be too easy as to be a glorified cutscene. Basically, your first unit test. I feel like Zero 2 handles that best with its first boss. You got this giant-ass scorpion mech slowly chasing you down, with a good amount of attacks that make sure you've gotten used to your weapons and mobility. You need the right timing to jump over its giant claw, you need proper spacing to know when its tail is going to come down and not fall into the pits it creates, and you need to know when to focus on attacking and when to focus on keeping your distance. Another thing to keep in mind is when to use your buster, which honestly is most of the time, and when you can go in with your saber. Given that this stage itself gives you all the opportunities you need to get used to what you can do with your most basic kit, this boss makes sure that you know what you're doing. I especially appreciate the detail of Zero in his wounded animation throughout the stage and the fight, considering what he's been through. This fight's a good first exam to cap off an intro that fans can appreciate. Unless your name happens to be Anakin.
There's a reason I use that soundbite in my LP. Oh my god, Linkara has been warning us all this time. The evidence is right in front of us. Ancient Egypt cannot be trusted!
From one desert boss to another, huh? Hope I don't get heat stroke or something. But when dealing with a Reploid based on the Egyptian god of death, it becomes a case of pick your poison. The Mutos Reploids are the general bosses for the Zero games, akin to Mavericks or Robot Masters. And the first of a few such bosses on here happens to come straight out of D&D. Anubis Necromancis doesn't even wait for you to invade his tomb. He's just standing there, well, floating there, waiting to stop you from rescuing your comrade. And being the representation of death, this fearsome jackal brought his own personal army of Pantheon zombies. That happen to be more resilient than their living counterparts, which he commands with a wave of his staff. A staff that the natural progression of Pharaoh Man doesn't even need to physically hold. It protects him from attacks as it flies around him, and with a wave of his arms, he can send it spinning along the ground like a saw blade. And if you manage to land a powerful hit, he'll just dissolve into the ground and try to smash you between pillars of sand, with spikes on top. Fighting this dude requires you to pay attention to a couple of things at once, but never in a way that feels overbearing. Between the zombies and that cane, being able to multitask is key to avoid getting stuffed in a coffin of your own. It's a fun fight, and one that tests your reflexes especially. Not to mention Dr. Vile revived him in Zero 3, complete with terraforming power, because zombies clearly weren't enough. Some things are so closely associated with a franchise that it's hard to imagine that franchise doing anything different. Mario has Princess Peach getting kidnapped, Zelda has the dungeon item boss pattern, and Mega Man has the obligatory boss rush. Ever since 1987, you've always expected to refight the same bosses you already beat in the endgame. Granted, you know the patterns and weaknesses, but would it hurt to throw us a curveball once in a while? A story in 3 parts. Herculeus Ancus is the boss in the first Neo Arcadia stage in 01, and much like his commander Harpuya, ice tears him to shreds. Flash forward a game, and his brother Kuagus tries to slam an airship into the Resistance base. While he puts up more of a fight than his big bro, eventually he'll go down the same way. So imagine my surprise when I first stepped into that teleporter standing between me and this prissy pants, only to find the robotic descendants of both Kabuto and Gatax staring me down, operating under the influence of the baby elves and looking to toss my rebellious keister to the curb faster than you can say brotherly love. A twist? Yeah. Unfair? Please, a motherfucking 0! Think of this battle like Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright in the form of Full Metal Beetles with wind and thunder at their command. You're gonna need to keep your eyes open to deal with their individual abilities, not to mention the obligatory tag team attacks, which include a double charge across the screen and an electric jump rope. The weird thing here is that they share a common health bar despite being 2 separate characters. But that's probably so that Inti could avoid the logistics of having one picking up where the straggler left off. Despite being outnumbered, victory comes down to knowing your opponent's moves rather than double-team cheapness. Of course, they have one last gasp once their health reaches 0. A fitting end that these guys are brothers to the end. Now, can we get more twists like this? You know, twists that are actually good. Among the most important players in the saga of Zero are the 4 Guardians of Neo Arcadia, powerful generals built in the image of X, tasked with commanding the city's forces against all opposition. Through the first 3 games, their loyalty is to their city and the humans living there, which naturally brings them into opposition with our robotic freedom fighter. And wouldn't you know it, one of them's a combat junkie. You know those guys who needlessly stockpile guns in their homes? Yeah, make a robot with that kind of personality, give him a fiery red paint job, and put him in charge of your ground troops. Yep, that sure is a recipe for carnage. Fafnir is battle crazy from the crest of his helmet to the soles of his Ceratanium boots. All he wants to do is fight, and fight some more, and Zero just happens to be the #1 target for his ridiculously oversized flame cannons. Cannons that he puts to use to scorching effect. 3rd-degree fireballs, shockwaves, a grip you don't want to get anywhere near. Yeah, he ain't playing. Especially when he can beef up all his standard attacks from his fighting spirit alone. Even his elemental weakness of thunder doesn't slow him down for long. And for those opponents he sees as truly worthy, he's ready and willing to make it rain fire and brimstone. Appropriate that his cannons are named Sodom and Gomorrah, except the only pillar of salt involved here is his salty runback in 02. And he packs even more heat than before, quite literally might I add, in the form of spreading burst shots and a new EX move that causes magma to erupt from the ground. And even after a challenging fight like that, he still has no regrets. He actually enjoys fighting you more than doing his duty. Right there, that's what we call obsession. As much as we saw Dr. Vile's evil in 03 with how he manipulated his way into power in Neo Arcadia and used the Dark Elf and Omega to take control of all Reploids on the planet, that evil is on full display in 04. Not one to wait for carbon emissions to cause a climate catastrophe, he launches a full-scale assault on the last vestige of nature and the last place on Earth not under his control. Ragnarok, a war waged by a battalion known as the Einherjar, and the lengths they're willing to go to will make your blood run cold. Considering the nightmare of accelerated climate change by calculated warfare, it should come as no surprise that one of Vile's officers happens to be the great-grandson of Blizzard Wolfang from X6. Fenrir Luna Edge, the cold-hearted operative of the Einherjar, comes packing a pair of ice blades and wolf-like agility, both of which he uses to chilling effect. He's the closest the Zero series has to a ninja short of being Phantom himself. More on that later. Being quick on his paws, his attacks are fast and cover a lot of ground, including a quick rolling attack, a close-range stab, a series of slashes that require precise dashing and jumping to avoid, and even ice clones that attack with him if they're not destroyed. and depending on the weather, he has an EX skill where he launches 2 giant ice waves. Aside from his cool design, his speed and agility make him an absolutely ruthless opponent. A fierce foe to be reckoned with, a test of your agility and reflexes, not to mention a wolf that loves to howl in your face, Luna Edge will give you a run for your money. Take him lightly at your own risk. He may just end up putting you on ice.
God damn it, who snuck all these ice puns into my script? Terra me!
Of the 4 Guardians, the one who stood out the most to me was their de facto leader, the Master of the Skies, Harpuya. Originally portrayed as a loyal servant and protector of Neo Arcadia, shown as a direct foil to Zero's crusade against said city's racist treatment of Reploids. As his views develop over the course of the series, he comes to understand Zero's values, even if they clash with his own. His battle in Zero 1, however, didn't leave a good first impression. Magma Dragoon's pride, Spark Mandrill's AI. You're the commander! Freaking fight like one! Yikes, now that's an upgrade. In a race against time to stop a fallen soldier, the Guardians, one by one, face off with Zero once again. And just as Fafnir and Leviathan fall, so too must Harpuya. Forced kicking and screaming into his armed phenomenon form by the mad Elpizo, the stalwart commander has no choice but to fight Zero one last time, not for the sake of his city or his ideals, but because of the baby elf's corruption. You can even hear him screaming in agony during the battle, knowing he's lost all control. And this powerful eagle form has the storm at his command. A tornado that can blow you off the edge, an endless supply of missiles, a pair of electric sweepers that require the right placement to avoid, swooping at you from the side and the background, and for those especially skilled, a devastating EX attack which covers a ridiculous amount of battlefield real estate. It's a battle of position, agility, and skill against a soldier forced to battle against his will. And in the end, Harpuya makes one final request, a statement of trust towards the rival whom he knows is after the same target. A telling moment in the development of my favorite Guardian. Note, baby elves may cause side effects such as headaches, confusion, loss of control, and grotesque mutations. If you experience any of these symptoms, please contact Dr. Light because baby elves may not be right for you. Plenty of games feature the type of villain who not only walks the path of evil, but knows and fully embraces it. Sometimes the enemy knows their path is stained in blood, but they see no other way. But perhaps the scariest villain of all is the one who fully believes that he's the hero. The image of the legendary Maverick Hunter and protector of humanity, saddled with a terrifying superiority complex and a warped sense of justice. The false savior and dictator of Neo Arcadia, Copy X, strikes at all who oppose him, completely convinced that he's fighting for the greater good, having no concept of the memories and experience held by his original. Struck down by Zero in the climax of the first game, he returns in Zero 3, resurrected by the treacherous Dr. Vile. And he's more than ready for a rematch, completely oblivious to the fact that he himself is just a pawn on the chessboard. Equipped with his ultimate armor, the fake hero has lost none of his strength from his first battle with Zero. A buster as powerful as ever, impressive agility to pull off his fearsome attacks, a Nova Strike that screams across the arena, a slide that would make even Bison proud, the elements of ice, fire, and lightning at his command, each with its own unique attacks, and for the strongest of resistance, a reflecting laser which covers a lot of area on the screen. It's a fierce battle, but at no point does it ever feel cheap. Once you notice the tells, you'll have just enough time to react. It's a test of skill and a true battle of equals. And unlike Zero 1, there's no bullshit second phase with attacks that give you barely any time to dodge them. Not that he doesn't try, mind you, he's fully prepared to go Seraph on you. It's just that Dr. Vile rigged the fight so that he could finish Copy X and pin the whole thing on Zero in order to take over Neo Arcadia. Talk about a pathetic way to go out. Couldn't even be left with what little dignity he had remaining. Stealth is one of the most effective weapons one can wield, and one of the cruelest. The most terrifying of threats is the one you never see coming. Make all the preparations you want. The one who remains hidden is the one who's best prepared to catch you off guard. Because he sees you when you can't see him. He's figured you out before you even know he's there. Oh yeah, it's later. The four Guardians were masters of their domain. Harpuya, Lord of the Skies. Fafnir, Master of the Earth. Leviathan, Queen of the Seas. And the fourth, the one who commands from the shadows, Hidden Phantom. This Full Metal Shinobi performs his duties with unfailing loyalty to his master, seeking to destroy all who oppose him without mercy. Not one to wait for Zero to find his inner chamber, he is the only boss in the series to greet you at the beginning of the mission. And seeing that he's the Zero series' resident super ninja, he has the whole repertoire of shinobi techniques. Shurikens that he can ride on, a flurry of kunai, a swift-cutting katana, shadow clones and substitution jutsu, even the ability to cloak the entire arena in darkness. Yep, this guy's been reading Naruto and studying every page. Only thing he's missing is the Izuna drop. And he's so loyal to Copy X that in the rematch, it's not enough to simply drop his health to 0. He has a kamikaze move that will attempt to take you with him. But even death isn't enough. In this series, the souls of departed Reploids find their way to cyberspace. And in 03, there's a hidden room in the penultimate stage that can only be accessed in cyberspace. And waiting for you on the other side is Phantom, waiting to throw the gauntlet before you. And he's upgraded himself from Chunin to Jonin level. All of his attacks are powered up to the next level, covering even more ground than before, and supplemented by new ones to push your skills even further. A thrilling rematch with a conclusion that further foreshadows the shocking twist to come. Loyal to his cause until the end, and daring you to hold true even in the face of what's to come. Believe it. It's a story told and retold over the ages. The evil empire reigning over all. The ragtag band of resistance struggling against all odds for the sake of freedom. The sinister madman behind everything. But every saga must come to an end. Trust in the Force. Ignite your lightsaber. And bring down the Emperor. Once and for all. An epic finale, 4 games in the making, and well worth the wait. Despite not appearing until more than halfway through the Zero saga, the tyrannical Dr. Vile is the sole reason for everything in this series. A devil fueled by bottomless hate, infinitely intensified by the immortal exile he brought upon himself. And even after tanking a full blast from his own Death Star, the Mega Man franchise's own Emperor Palpatine refuses to allow anything to remain unscathed. So it's only fitting that the last hope lies in the hands of the resident Jedi of the robot race. With Vile fused to the very core of the falling Ragnarok, he holds nothing back. From pelting you with rocks, to showering you with daggers and electrifying them, to spraying you with acid rain, to healing himself, to teleporting constantly, and even summoning his previous creations in an attempt to crush you. If the station had a kitchen sink, he'd probably attack you with that too. And while being blown apart would stop any other human, cyborg or otherwise, Vile is working his regenerating body for all it's worth. Now applying the notes he took from the Bio-Lizard, the absolute madman fuses with Ragnarok itself, turning into a grotesque abomination. And following Zero's badass final words, you now have 2 minutes to finish off the tyrant. And he won't go down without kicking and screaming the whole way. Keeping himself shielded, opening himself only to blast you with a barrage of energy attacks. Lasers, energy balls, summoning enemies, spikes, acid. You will be on the move constantly, looking for any opportunity to attack given the circumstances. The battle is further intensified by the battle theme, Falling Down, a tense, fast-paced melody underscoring the desperation of the conflict, all capped off by a bittersweet triumph. Zero laying the bastard low for good, at the cost of his life, but his sacrifice giving the world a chance at peace. A finale that could have easily taken number 1. But no, there is another.
But given the origin of Model W in the ZX games, I have some advice for Capcom should they decide to make that third ZX game. Tread carefully. We do not want another Rise of Skywalker.
And before we move on, here are a few honorable mentions. Highleg Orobuckle from Mega Man 02, Death Tan's Mantisk from Mega Man 03, Leviathan from Mega Man 01 and 2, Hana Machine from Mega Man 01 and 3, and Tech Kraken from Mega Man 04. The nature of all conflict boils down to the pursuit of dominance. The struggle to triumph against all odds in a relentless quest for the top. The desire to stand above all others so that all may see your power. No matter how strong the foe before you, the drive to triumph fuels one towards greatness. It's an age-old ritual, a rite of passage. To become the Alpha, you must overcome the Omega. Even with the rest of the series fresh in my mind, nothing has been able to top 03's epic clash with Dr. Vile's most sinister weapon, his very own Darth Vader. The Supreme Reploid, Omega, the monster that led the world to the brink of annihilation, now more powerful than ever thanks to the Dark Elf it now houses within its titanic frame. Zero was barely able to hold it off in the beginning of the game, but this time, it's winner take all. The first phase of the fight is actually an amped up version of the intro stage fight, with more health and attacks that are faster and more powerful than before, including a sword that now rends the very ground asunder. Seeing that it's similar to the intro stage, you should be able to handle this the same way, but your previous experience will only get you so far. Unleashing the power of the Dark Elf, Omega's second form is so massive the screen can't possibly contain it. Caught in freefall, Omega bombards you with a storm of energy attacks, including a tracking shot, a containment field that imprisons you, lasers from his eyes and the X and Zero heads on his shoulders, and a gigantic buster shot. This form will keep you constantly on the move with the sheer scope of the attacks at his disposal. A little factoid here, but both the first and second phases were originally intended to be more complex with more attacks to deal with, but the Game Boy Advance's limitations hampered those plans. But they went all in on the final phase. A battle against a merciless god of destruction spawned from Zero's original body, before the backdrop of the chamber where everything began. Omega Zero has access to the Maverick Hunter's most powerful techniques, including buster combos, saber combos, and multiple Giga attacks. An arsenal befitting the body of Dr. Wily's greatest creation being put to its original purpose, against the heart of the Crusader of Hope that the real Zero became. Original body against original heart. And in the end, the heart triumphs, giving you control to personally deliver the final blow, ending the menace for good. The action, the symbolism, the intensity, the setting, even the music. Judgment Day and Cannonball are among the greatest boss themes ever. Everything comes together in this incredible finale. After all this time, it's still my favorite final battle ever.
And it turns out that Model W isn't the only legacy that Dr. Vile left behind in the ZX series. In the first ZX game, there's an area where you can fight not only bosses from 0, 3, and 4, but even Omega Zero as a super boss. And believe it or not, he's even tougher than before. Just don't expect me to put him on a ZX bosses list. That would be a cop-out. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed.
This is a dark age, only imagined in the works of Tolkien and Martin. Monsters roam the lands freely. Giants tower above mortal men. The people live in fear of goblins, orcs, and other D&D creatures. Magic is seized from mischievous little imps. And all of this because people are fighting over a wood-cutting tool. Seriously, you'd think people would take better care of the forests. Next time, QG at the arcade. Golden Axe. It's game time!